Hey everyone, welcome to Posy2 Mind. Today, we're diving into something that might shake your core beliefs. Were you really raised in love, or was it fear disguised as love? Many of us think our childhood was shaped by tough love. But what if I told you that tough love and survival mode are not the same thing? And even more, what if growing up in survival mode has been holding you back without you even knowing? Some people say that hardship builds character, but does it really? Stay tuned, because what you discover today might completely change how you view your upbringing and, most importantly, how you approach life moving forward. 1. Criticism, tough love or survival mode. Growing up, were you constantly criticized even when you thought you were doing your best? Constant criticism is something many children face, but in survival mode, it can become relentless, leaving deep emotional scars. Recently, a viral thread on X, formerly Twitter, discussed how some parents use constant criticism as a way to motivate their children. But instead of fostering growth, this can leave long-term damage. One user shared, "No matter what I achieved, my parents always found something to criticize. It made me feel like I would never be good enough." This feeling of never being enough is a hallmark of being raised in survival mode, where the focus is always on avoiding failure rather than achieving success. I relate to this so much. Growing up, I constantly felt like nothing I did was ever good enough. Even when I worked my hardest, it always seemed like I was falling short in my parents' eyes. It wasn't until much later in life that I realized this wasn't normal. This was survival mode. If you've felt this way, know that you're not alone. 2. Physical touch. Comfort or fear. For many of us, physical affection is a natural part of showing love. But for those raised in survival mode, physical touch can be cold, rare, or even frightening. On TikTok, a viral video showcased a young woman who spoke about how her family rarely hugged or showed any form of affection. She shared, "I didn't even realize that not hugging was strange until I saw how my friends acted with their families." Thousands of comments poured in from people who grew up in similar environments, highlighting how the absence of physical affection shapes their emotional health in adulthood. Physical affection was rare in my family, too. It always felt awkward, almost like we didn't know how to express love physically. As a result, I grew up associating physical touch with discomfort, and it took me years to understand why I struggled with affection in my relationships. 3. Structure, stability, or chaos. A stable family environment is something many take for granted. But when you're raised in survival mode, chaos and instability can become a daily reality. On Reddit's Raised by Narcissists community, one user shared their experience of growing up in a home where there was no routine or stability. They wrote, "I never knew when my dad would come home or if he would be in a good mood. It felt like I was always walking on eggshells, never knowing what would happen next." This type of inconsistency creates a chaotic environment that affects children well into adulthood. I can relate to the feeling of unpredictability. Growing up, my household felt like a ticking time bomb. One minute everything was calm, and the next, there was an explosion of conflict. This constant instability made it hard for me to trust anyone or feel safe, even in adulthood. 4. Emotional neglect. The silent wound. Emotional neglect is often invisible, but its effects are deeply damaging. It's not just about physical needs being unmet. It's about not getting the emotional support that is crucial for a child's development. Take Demi Lovato, for example. Despite her fame, she's spoken openly about feeling emotionally neglected during her childhood. In interviews, she shared how her parents were focused on her career but didn't provide the emotional support she needed. This emotional neglect left her feeling alone, even at the height of her success. Looking back, I realized there were so many moments when I needed emotional support, but it just wasn't there. My parents were physically present, but emotionally they were distant. It made me feel invisible, and I didn't understand how much that shaped my self-worth until much later. 5. Abuse. Living in fear, not love. No child should live in constant fear of their parents, but for those raised in survival mode, fear becomes a way of life. Abuse, whether it's physical, emotional, or verbal, leaves deep scars. A popular YouTube video featured a woman named Amanda who shared her story of growing up with an emotionally abusive father. She detailed how, despite being a top student, her father would belittle her every achievement, saying she wasn't good enough. Her video has millions of views, with thousands of comments from people who experienced similar abuse. Amanda's story is a reminder that abuse doesn't always leave physical scars, but the emotional damage can be just as severe. I never experienced physical abuse, but the emotional manipulation I went through was just as damaging. It wasn't about what was said. It was how it was said, how it made me feel small, unworthy, and constantly afraid of messing up. These wounds don't heal easily, and they stick with you long after the abuse ends. If you recognize yourself in any of these signs, know that you're not alone. Being raised in survival mode is incredibly tough, but it doesn't define who you are. You can heal, and you can learn to live in a way that isn't just about surviving, but about thriving. If this video resonated with you, please leave a like, share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to Posy2Mind for more content like this.